Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And Frank from Tested.
Frank, what are we doing today in this old effects shop?
We are gonna glue on some foam latex pieces.
Makeup appliances.
Yes!
Oh, you know, we do a lot of casting and building up props, but we haven't done a lot of makeup on people.
We've done a couple things. I did Farnsworth and I'm working on the Peter Cushing makeup. So, I mean, we've kind of done some stuff, but those have been a little bit custom. And we also did those silicone build-up makeups with the skin-tight stuff from Smooth On. And that's kind of like fun to do, but you know, there's a lot of people that make like custom prosthetics, but you can get stuff off the shelf and do really cool stuff with them.
Where do they sell that?
Mostly it's online. These are all from a company called RBFX. If you look on Instagram or something like that, they'll tell you where to buy them and stuff like that. But
so let's take a look at this. These are prosthetics just like you were talking about with the Farnsworth or when you made the Vulcan ears, but as opposed to having them sculpted and cast for a specific model or actor, they're just off the shelf.
Yes.
And what are these made of?
These are foam latex. So these are sculpted and molded the same way we do any other prosthetic, but they're just running foam latex. And a lot of people use silicone appliances right now, but there's nothing wrong with foam latex. I actually like applying foam latex a little bit better than silicone, just because I'm more comfortable with it.
And they sell these appliances for all different types of makeups, different types of creatures.
Yeah, there's tons and tons and tons of zombie appliances. Last year we did a zombie movie, and most of the stuff we got was stock appliances from RBFX. There's, you know, as far as zombie goes, there's usually not a whole lot of call for like a specific sculpted thing that takes a lot of time to mold and, you know, work out the makeup design. You can get all these pieces. Like these aren't even like a big full like zombie brow thing. They're very customizable if your face is different sizes. And then we also have a whole bunch of little wounds that we can kind of mix and match and kind of create that character. So you get a bunch of little appliances, kind of create your character, and you can go for it. Or they also have like very developed like bigger zombie appliances and monsters and aliens and all kinds of stuff. But all of this stuff you can get like off the shelf and practice with before spending all the time and money to make your own.
Very cool. Well, to get a full demo of what that appliance process is going to be like, we've invited our friend, come on over here. This is Gordon Tarpley. Gordon, we've had you on the show before. Yes. You're a great C3PO, and perfectly, you've shaved your head, you get chrome dome, you'll be our model today for this zombie appliance. So let's get you in the makeup chair and get started.
Start gluing them up.
All right. Okay, so we got Gordon in the makeup chair. Frank, you have a bunch of prosthetics. As you mentioned earlier, there's no need to use all of them, right?
No, I pulled a whole bunch of stuff out that I happen to have left over from another project, just so I can kind of mix and match and pick what I want.
Now, because these are kind of all-purpose, you know, they're off the shelf, they're not made for Gordon's head here, are there modifications you have to do to have them fit, or is it?
Not a lot. It's mostly about just kind of making sure, like, I know, like in my mind, where the edges are going to be and kind of how they need to lay down.
It's pretty forgiving. You can
pull and stretch and kind of make them fit. Like, it's not that bad.
Now, I imagine a lot of people putting this stuff on, they won't be bald. They won't have the luxury of no hair.
Of having a blank canvas.
Yep. What are you doing to prep Gordon?
Well, we started off with him having a clean and shaven face. Like, if you have like oils from, you know, sleeping on your pillow all night long, things won't stick so well. Or, you know, if you've been drinking the night before, you got to clean the skin off. So he's clean, and now we're just putting some glue on. There's a bunch of different ways to glue a prosthetic on. The way that I'm doing it is I'm putting the glue kind of all over, and then I'm going to put the piece on, and you just kind of place it.
Just goes right on top of his head and over his eyebrow.
Yeah, you can. I'm taking a lot of shortcuts because this doesn't need to be something fancy. So you can put the glue on. You see how I just kind of like sort of tacked it on so it's kind of in place, and then I can kind of work on the edges, like work my way out.
So it's more about just in place toward the center, making sure you're not getting a big fold in the prosthetic.
Yeah.
So what is this you're painting on right now?
This is just a little bit of alcohol. It kind of helps lubricate the piece. Since I put glue everywhere, it just helps me slide the piece on. If I were to try and just push it down, sometimes it'll do funny things. So it's easier sometimes to just use this alcohol to kind of help ease it into place.
And you're getting the alcohol on the back of the prosthetic as well as a little bit on his face?
Yeah, it's just, again, it's just kind of helping it slide into place. And then also if you get an edge that kind of crinkles under, you can use a little bit of this alcohol and kind of re-wet the piece sort of and push it out. So if I got bad edges, sometimes you can push them out a little bit.
You want your model or actor to stay as still as possible throughout the process?
You know, the best models are the ones that sit still and let you kind of do your job. You know, if they're checking their phone or goofing around or trying to have a conversation, like those are usually the ones that make the makeup take longer. You know, especially if they're antsy and they want to get out of the makeup chair, the best thing to do is just sit still. But I mean, all of this stuff, like the methods, the order of operations, it's all pretty standard, and there's a lot of great books and information and stuff put out by really great seasoned veterans if you want to learn the ins and outs of all these like little steps. You know, because it's really like skinning a cat. Like some people will say, you know, to put the prosthetic on in a very kind of ritualistic manner, like from left to right or in to out, or like there's all kinds of theories on what works best. At the end of the day, I mean, it needs to be so that it's down in the correct spot and it's glued down so that it holds for whatever time you need to shoot. So, you know, sometimes the order can be messed with. Like everything's different, so.
I noticed for you, it seems like you like using that prosthetic just to do your general placement, and then once you use the alcohol to get the seams tucked in, you're going up close to the Silbon just underneath the eyebrow where you need the precision.
But there's times where I'll put a whole prosthetic on just like bit by bit with the silicone adhesive. Like most likely when I do the Tarkin makeup, that will be a much slower process because those pieces have to go on in a very specific order in a very specific place. This is a zombie, so it can kind of get put on wherever. So in a way, I'm still trying to like follow the anatomy of Gordon's face.
Yeah, look at that. Even the brow ridge fits perfectly with Gordon's brow.
That was something that I noticed in the piece, and I kind of stretched it around to make it line up that way.
Giving you those cheekbones that all the male models want.
So these pieces, like if you go look on the internet to buy these, at first glance, they're a little bit on the pricey side. But if you think about the cost of making all the molds and the time to sculpt, and if you're a new sculptor and maybe you're not as quick or as good at making the edges and stuff, it kind of balances out. If you want to practice, like you want to practice with a good prosthetic, you know.
If you want to learn sculpting, practice sculpting. If you want to learn appliances, practice appliances. Don't use all your time and money on the sculpting.
Yeah, exactly. Especially when it's something like a zombie piece. Like, you know, you could spend a couple $100 making all the molds and learning how to run foam latex or silicone or any of those things. And for that same amount of money, you could have bought a couple of these pieces. So if you want to practice and learn how to put down really nice prosthetics, this is like kind of the best way to do it. You know, these prosthetics are also pretty widely used at demos. Like if you go to Monsterpalooza, a lot of people are using the RBFX prosthetics. So, you know, if you see a demo there that you really like, you could kind of try and replicate the paint jobs and practice putting it on by getting those same prosthetics. You know, it used to be that when you would go to the makeup trade shows, like people would make all their stuff from scratch, and it was actually really cool seeing, you know, it was almost like people are trying to outdo themselves every year. Now there's a little bit less of that. You know, there's always really cool stuff like Akihito always makes cool custom stuff, but a lot of times these demos just end up being, you know, these pieces, which is fine.
Frank, when you're choosing the number of prosthetics and the placement, are you also thinking about the mobility for the model or actor's face after it's all applied, and where their muscles are going to move and how that might affect how that appliance looks?
You know, in the design of an appliance, a lot of times the sculptor has thought about that. And if you have really nice sculpted pieces that really, like these are really thin pieces. I'm not adding like this is a little bit thick right here, and this has a little bit there, but most of these are really, really thin, subtle pieces. So movement's never really going to be an issue. I'm more thinking about the composition of it. You know, I put a big wound over here, now I want to put a couple pieces over here, and I want to, you know, balance everything out. I don't want to have all the wounds over on one side of the face. I mean, unless it's a zombie that's got half of his face, but you have to think about
You're not making
story.
Deadpool.
Yeah, you got to think about the story as well as the composition of the makeup. You know, it's all important.
Clearly, this zombie hit his head on this side and then was bit on that side.
This is where he was bit originally. Yeah.
It's like you want to make sure there's something to show from multiple angles too. Mm-hmm. Like if it's not just about looking straight on and seeing something in every corner. I'm looking from the right side, okay, something in the bottom right there. I'm looking at his left side and then something on the top there.
I mean, unless if you're doing this for a film and maybe it is a zombie that, you know, has been laying in the dirt, and so half of his face has kind of been, you know, soaking in the dirt and eaten by bugs or something like that. So then only half of his face is really deteriorated. The other half could be, you know, fairly clean.
Yeah. Or if you know the camera's never going to see the other half of his face.
You never want to assume the camera's never. You always want to assume at the last second they're going to want to shoot the other side of the face. That has happened to many people many times. I mean, that's why, like, you know, even as a prop maker or something like that, you can't say, oh, they'll never show the handle or they'll never show, like, you know, whatever. Like, everything that has to be great because you never know what somebody's going to want to, how they want to film it. Even if it's in the storyboard and it's been talked about. And so that's pretty much all the pieces glued down. So now I'm going to use just a little bit more of this glue to seal the piece and kind of seal the edges on a little bit. If you have pieces with bad edges, which none of these are really bad edges, you can use a thickened version of this Prosthetic to kind of patch those edges or any gaps or something like that. But, you know, again, these pieces are so nice, you don't need to use any of that filler to kind of fill those gaps.
The glue works as a filler. It's interesting.
It can. You thicken it. You put a little bit of Cabasil or there's another matting agent called TS100 that you can add to thicken it. And I've heard a lot of people in the past saying that they use liquid latex as a glue, or there's an eyelash adhesive called Duo. That stuff really isn't a good, like, tenacious glue for prosthetics like this. It might help you just kind of tack it on for a little bit, but it's going to be more trouble than it's worth in the long run. I mean, there's nothing on that table that's cheap. Everything's expensive. But if you learn on kind of the wrong products to begin with, then you're going to learn, you know, bad habits. You know, it's sometimes best to spend the extra money on the right products to learn it the right way the first time. And they're all expensive, so there's no way to get around that. Okay, so looks like all the pieces are on. Yeah, we're all glued and sealed.
That looks awesome just as it is.
It's kind of neat. It's really fun.
So quick recap, you put each of the prosthetics on first using some of that glue, the Prosthetic glue, to get it in the general place. Then use alcohol to get the edges to kind of glide into place, avoid any of those wrinkles and folds. Then use some Silibon just underneath the tight for more finessing.
Yeah, in the areas that maybe didn't have enough glue or needed to be kind of moved around a little bit.
And then some more of the Prosthetic glue or to dab around the edges just to really seal it.
Yeah, seal the Prosthetic and then kind of lock it on.
Okay, so what's your next step?
Next step is to start painting. And there's a lot of different ways to tackle painting. Because this is an opaque foam latex piece, it's not already in the realm of his skin tone, so we have to bring that skin tone up. But he's going to be a zombie, so we can be a little bit heavy-handed with these colors. So I'm going to start bringing this a little bit closer to his regular flesh tone, and then I'm going to do a color treatment over the whole thing to make it kind of that jaundicey, gray, yellowy, brown, green, I don't know, zombie color.
The whole thing meaning his face.
Yeah, the whole thing.
The first thing, you're painting just the appliances to get closer to Gordon's skin.
And then I'll start tying everything together.
Cool. Okay, Frank, let's start talking about your paint and how you're painting just the appliances. You're not using a brush.
No, not yet. I mean, you can use a brush. Right now I'm using a PAX paint. There's a couple different people that make PAX paint, and this happens to be, I think, Mel or Tom Supernaut or maybe both. PAX paint is basically pigment and prostate. So this is a little bit more of that glue, but with pigment in it. Sometimes it's acrylic, sometimes it's powdered pigments, like cosmetic pigments. But this is just help bringing those foam pieces into the realm of Gordon's skin tone. Because I don't want to have these pieces be a stark difference in color. Once I start doing the next steps, I'm gonna have to keep fighting, these undertones. And I'm not painting all over his face. I don't want to glue his whole face with this PAX paint. I'm just trying to keep it pretty much just to the prosthetic. One of the things that I learned kind of early on, that you shouldn't necessarily try and tie the whole skin tone into your prosthetic. You should tie the prosthetic into the skin tone. So to practice just the subtle, color blending between those things is, it's a good exercise, and it's sometimes tricky. But it also just needs to get close enough so that the next steps, I'm not fighting these undertones. Sometimes when I'm putting the paints on, the sponge has a bunch of edges, so I might be putting on the paint heavy here, but then I can use another corner that doesn't have a ton of paint on there to kind of help blend it or move it around.
It's like having multiple brushes in one hand.
Yeah, pretty much. A lot of times when I have to do makeups on set, you have to do it as fast as you can. So sometimes I'll paint with two brushes. I'll have two brushes in my hand, and yeah, sometimes you have to do crazy things.
Okay, Frank, so you have all of your prosthetics. Look pretty good. Like, I noticed you didn't need to paint the skull.
Yeah,
or
skull,
the bite,
exposed skull.
because that's not skin.
Yep, that's going to be blood, and that's going to be dirty, exposed skull. At this point, like if you were going to do a subtle makeup, like a character makeup, like a nose or something like that, you could just use a little bit of adjusting, and you could get it right there. Like, I tried to only paint the appliance to kind of tie in all these colors. So now it's just about little adjustments to really bring the whole thing together. Mm-hmm. But we're gonna make them all kind of gross. So I'm gonna start doing a couple of passes of colors to change all of his skin tones. And because we're just doing like this demo, just this much, I'm not gonna go past his ears. I'm just gonna kind of work face forward from here. So if it was film, we do the whole head and everything. But
I also noticed you put some powder on his face. What's that for?
Well, that PAX is a glue with pigment, so you have to powder it afterwards, otherwise it's sticky. Same thing with the glue that I used to put down there. Like you have to powder it with a no color powder. Baby powder or cornstarch don't really work because they have it's got some color to it. It'll make things like real chalky. So you want to use like a good no color powder, and most prosthetic makeup companies that sell stuff have a good no color powder. Now I'll just start layering on a bunch of other stuff. I'm going to use some rubber mask grease. And I'm going to use some inks, which are they're resin-based paints that you use alcohol to activate them. So it's kind of like painting with watercolors. And there's a bunch of different companies that make those. Premier Products makes Skin Illustrator. European Body Art makes their Endura. They're all great. So I'm going to just kind of use a little bit of everything.
Greens.
Yellows. Jaundice. So if you think about a zombie, you can go for the traditional Scooby-Doo green, or you can go for, grays or whatever. And a lot of that might come down to artistic preference. But in my mind, I try to think about where in the timeline this zombie is rotten. Is it fresh? Has it been kind of old? Like where in the decay range are things? So Gordon's, the prosthetics that are on here don't really lend him to being too old and rotten. So he's still relatively fresh as far as a zombie. And if you think about when a body dies, what happens to it? It loses its opacity and starts turning really jaundicey yellow and kind of jaundicey yellow. So for me, it makes sense to start with these yellow washes of color, and then start building up the details and the little gross bits. I don't know. I mean, you can think about the physiology of what happens, and you can come up with that backstory. If it was something that was sitting in a swamp, those colors might be different. If it was something that was, sitting out in the heat and, in Atlanta where they have The Walking Dead, maybe those colors do something different. Maybe this is a guy from Return of the Living Dead Part 3 that's been in a morgue, and so he's just kind of taken care of, but jaundicey and kind of gross. So there you go.
So it looks like you got all that yellow jaundice color on. You're darkening it up a little bit now.
Yeah, I'm adding these like undertone, speckly kind of modelly breakup stuff. Underneath all the skin, there's all those, like there could be blood pooling, or there could be broken capillaries, or there could be all kinds of interesting things happening under the skin. And so I want to it's still pretty subtle, but I want to give this like underpainting texture kind of thing.
So this isn't about the dirt. This is
not dirt.
Nowhere near that.
This is an underskin.
This is a foundation.
Yeah.
To pop up through whatever your final paint's going to be.
Yep.
Frank, what type of paints are you using here?
These are the alcohol activated inks. It's kind of like painting with watercolors. I have a pretty good palette of various colors. I think this palette is specifically kind of built for doing zombies and stuff like that. But I'm just sort of starting to add in some details and some other color breakup and stuff like that, so that it's not, it's all about layering colors. If you look at, even natural flesh, it's all a bunch of different colors that are all kind of layered together. So it's no different in a zombie. You have to kind of layer colors to make it look like a natural-ish, interesting paint job.
And this, you said, is alcohol base.
Yeah. So this is 99% alcohol that you just kind of dip your brush in and then dip a little bit in there, and you can kind of use it as a palette. And they make a bunch of these palettes that are sometimes very specific made. A lot of times big movies will have, when we were on Pirates of the Caribbean, we had a specific Pirates palette, and those were pretty much the colors that we always needed. So we only had to carry one palette with us.
For makeups, is it okay to use water, oils, alcohol-based paints, or is there one that works better for certain types?
I kind of jump around. We started out with packs, and then I put rubber mask grease on there, and now I'm kind of finishing off with inks. So, it all depends on your painting style, your painting preference. It's always kind of a right tool for the right job, or what you might be feeling at that moment. So it's kind of all over the place.
And for the alcohol-based paints, does it go on differently? Or does it adhere better to the prosthetic, the skin?
Well, I mean, you have to seal the foam prosthetics to put the alcohol-based paints on first. Because otherwise the foam latex will just soak up all this paint. But once it's all sealed, this has a bunch of layers of color on there, so I'm not really worried about whether or not it's gonna adhere. I'm just using it to kind of highlight areas and kind of bump some stuff up and bring out some details and make them look kind of gross.
So you've added some blood now, Frank. Ooh,
Yep.
look at that. Wow.
So my thoughts about blood are, okay, so he's a zombie, he's old. The blood coming out of him should not be red, but he's attacked people. So there should be blood splatters on him from things that he's attacked. So that's what this is. This
different aged blood from his life as a zombie, death as a zombie. I see it's the darker blood coming out of him, dripping from the wounds and the sores, and now fresher blood, maybe still not super fresh blood, but in a splatting pattern.
Yeah, so it just, I mean, you know, there's all kinds of ways you could think about blood and blood theory. You know, if you think about where the blood's coming from, how old is it supposed to be? You know, not all blood is fresh and bright. You know, so if he's got blood coming out of his mouth, dripping out of his mouth, that means that was like biting somebody or attacking somebody, right? But the blood coming out of his wounds is all this dark, old, crusty stuff. One of the things that drives me absolutely up a wall about most zombie makeups is for some magical reason their eyebrows disappear.
Right.
And I've never understood that. So I had a couple of just lace eyebrows sitting around so I can put some eyebrows on him, because zombies without eyebrows don't make any sense to me. I mean, I guess you could kind of say that their hair is rotten and falling off or whatever, but if they got a full head of hair or a goatee or
eyelashes,
and then they don't have eyebrows, it stands out to me so quick and just looks so silly. So, I mean, this is just a quick set of just laced eyebrows.
And you can buy these the same place you buy the prosthetics.
Exactly. Yeah, most of the like high-end makeup stores, you could buy a set of laced eyebrows. I mean, some of them are more expensive than others. This is a pretty old pair, so they're pretty raggedy. But, you know, a good set of eyebrows will cost you a couple $100.
Wow.
Because somebody's got to have that little piece of lace and tie each individual eyebrow on there, and they have to match, and they have to be the right direction. Like, it's a really tricky thing to do eyebrows, and some people do it really, really well. Can you open your eyes, look up a little bit?
Frick, I see a lot of zombie makeups where in the eyes, it's a little more sullen, it's a little darker in the sockets to make them look gaunt. What do you think about those?
Well, I think that if this were going to be a real zombie, probably one of the first things to dry up and be gross would be their eyes. So when they have even just milky, like whatever eyes, I don't think that that's even right. They would, like an eyeball is all water. Like that's going to be the first thing to dry and shrivel up and just probably be gone. So there's always that like suspension of disbelief when it comes to eyes. And so you have to take your artistic license and, you know, darken the eye sockets and then maybe put a little bit of red or something just around the rim of it just to kind of make it look kind of scary and gross or whatever. Not everything is going to be, you know, anatomically right, but zombie. So I'm going to make you do one more thing. I'm going to squirt a little bit of this is just mouthwash with food coloring and then just spit it out in here. If it dribbles down your chin, that's okay too. Cool. But swish it around your teeth, you know, the usual.
What color are you usually like for that? Oh, I see.
It's like red and green and blue. It's just a little bit all of it.
Oh.
Let's see your teeth? Yeah, let's get some more in there.
Minty fresh.
Yeah, he's a little better.
Dentist, got some drippage. Nice.
Yeah.
Wow, Gordon, you turned into a zombie. How do you feel?
Hungry.
Frick, that looks awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. You know, I don't get to do as much makeup as I used to, so it's fun to just kind of play and goof around. But, you know, you could see with real simple prosthetics, you could practice blending, practice working on your edges, goof around with paint jobs, try building a character. There's, you know, and there's a lot of products to practice with and to try out, so it's a lot of fun.
And you don't really need to go over the top.
No, you just need to have fun.
Yeah, blending it in, telling a story, having fun, turning your friends into zombies.
Yeah.
It's pretty accessible. Now, the fun part, getting everything off.
The least fun part is removing all the makeup. Basically, to remove the makeup, we take makeup removal, which is like isopropyl myricate or Super Solve, or there's a bunch of them. And you just put that on a brush and you start working under the edges and get the prosthetics off, and then you use a little bit more of that to help get all the paint off of the rest of his face and wash his face off. That's pretty much it. It's just makeup remover.
That's right. And then we go to lunch.
Then we go to lunch.
For brains.
For brains.
All right, we'll see you guys next time in this old effects shop. Thanks to Gordon for being our very patient and cooperative model today, and we'll see you guys. Bye.